Hey there, everybody. Andy here from Legendary Tales, and welcome back to Tales of Legend, a tabletop role playing game for your worlds, your heroes, and your stories. Today, I have a special video for you. Recently, I was on Grimwood Games Geekout with Dave and Mike, two incredible creators in the TTRPG space. We went over an hour talking about different TTRPG news and kickstarters, as well as Tales of Legend. It was an amazing interview, and I highly recommend you check out the original stream. I'll link Grimwood's YouTube channel in the doobly-doo below. With permission from Dave, I've condensed most of the interview aspect of the stream. He and Mike asked some wonderful questions about the design and philosophy of Tales of Legend. So if you have any interest in hearing about that sort of thing, please stick around. We will be back to our regularly scheduled tutorial videos by the weekend. Thanks everyone for joining in. Now let's begin.
That being said, Andy, it's time to talk about your game.
Oh boy.
So, you're making a setting agnostic sort of fantasy game.
Yeah, the idea is that whatever fantasy game you want to make, what I've given you is like a backbone, a mechanical backbone, and then you go nuts.
So why not just make it system agnostic and a setting agnostic in general, and just do a whole mechanical system? I mean, you're only missing a few things.
Yeah, the only thing about it is I could only make it so agnostic, and I had to stop at, is it going to be fantasy? Mm-hmm. And that came for two reasons. One is I think when you get into weapons versus spells and guns and lasers, and so sci-fi versus fantasy mechanically, that can break down a lot. And the other one is I feel like fantasy is the only major genre that most people in the Western world have a shared understanding of what that is. Whereas if I wanted to make a setting agnostic sci-fi game, I don't think we can do that because you have Star Trek sci-fi, you have Star Wars sci-fi. There's a lot of different versions of, there's no amalgamation that everybody kind of agrees on when it comes to like sci-fi, for example. But for fantasy, you can get away with that for sure.
100%. So it's fantasy based, but you do interesting things where you're like, it borrows heavily from 5e. From what
I come from a 5e background. I haven't played as many other TTRPGs as I would have wanted, and when I have, I've spread out to other fantasy settings. I mean, look behind me.
Yeah.
Fantasy is sort of my number one thing.
Stick around here, you'll play some modern games.
I'd love to. I really would. But yeah, that's my wheelhouse is turn-based fantasy, and even video games. That's what I grew up on.
So, okay, I'm going to ask you a really strange question. What's your favorite part about the system, and what's your least favorite part about the system?
My favorite part about the system, I think. So I totally made a system that works for me as an individual, right? My favorite part about the system is how easy it is to navigate certain things versus other games I played. For example, the hero table. There's not a class table for 12 classes. Again, I'm going to talk about 5e because that's my biggest experience. There's a singular class table or a hero table that I can reference and know everything I need to know at a glance. That is probably my favorite thing about the system. My least favorite thing about the system, that's a fantastic question. My least favorite part is if you're a brand new TTRPG person, especially if you're going to be the game master, the fact that it is completely setting agnostic, it does none of the lifting for you when it comes to conceptual things. So if you don't have a strong sense of fantasy, what your fantasy is, what your character concept is, what your game master's world is, you could probably get lost pretty quick because by design, it gets out of your way so you can do your own thing. And I think that's tough for some people.
So I'm showing the hero development table on screen. I have a really weird question. So,
Okay.
why did you decide to go with 2d4 instead of 1d8s? Or 1d6 plus 1d4s instead of 1d10s?
Believe it or not, I have found in all the times that I have played like fifth edition with brand new people, because I'm a forever DM, the dice paralysis that people will have is crazy. People don't know the difference between a D8 and a D10, and people don't know the difference between a D12 and a D20. And so, even though if you've got it in your head, the D20 is everything until you roll damage. That should be easy. I find people are just scrambling all the time. And so you play Tales of Legend with a single D20, two D6s, and two D4s. And that is all you have.
I love that both of our systems use weird dice.
I like weird
Because
dice.
I'm a D12. I'm a D12 system. Nobody uses a D12 system.
Yeah. I
Um,
fell in love with D4s. I don't know why. I did a homebrew thing where it was a bow, and instead of a D8, it was two D4. And the person who got the bow was like, "I hate this," and then like 2 hours later, I love this.
the only thing good about a D4 is throwing it at the DM when he screws you over.
Mm. Oh, and if you buy the ones that are sharp, oh my god.
I say they're nice caltrops. Yeah, absolutely.
So the system in general doesn't have a class structure per se. So
Correct.
Andy took me through not just me, but several other people. He took me through first level character generation the other day. And you get these things called heritages that basically you have the mortal heritage, which is basically any of your mortals: elves, dwarfs, halflings. Am I missing one? Any of your common humanoid races.
Yeah, and it sort of
Mon-
depends because again, if you wanted to open up and play like, okay, this is going to be a deep cut, but like Legends of Dragoon is one of my favorite games. So is Breath of Fire. These are old school video game RPGs. If you wanted to make a TTRPG using that system, cool. Well, in Breath of Fire, you have like harpy people, but they're just people. They're not their own thing. So mortal is a much bigger catch on than just human. It's who are your normal people, whatever they are.
You're instead of having 6 different stats, you have 4.
Yes. Again, I'm coming from a D&D Pathfinder kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Charisma, wisdom, and intelligence. I mean, if you're used to it, you're used to it and you don't think about it. But honestly, that's a mess.
It is kind of a mess, yes.
So, physicality is like strength and constitution put together. The physical body, your toughness. Again, I hate to keep comparing to those games, but constitution doesn't do much. It doesn't even need to be a thing.
It's just there for health points.
Yeah. So, your general stockiness can be your physical strength and your durability. So that's physicality. Then grace is pretty much dexterity. I mean, you've got to have that statistic. But then there's a singular magic stat aspect called focus. And that can be however you want to interpret what that is. And there are even a couple of options under focus that don't make you a spellcaster, but like maybe increases your mental defense or something like that, that
Right.
even your martial characters would want. And then last but not least is big S skill, which goes into skills.
Yeah, I like that your grace isn't just about strictly the accuracy perspective of dexterity, right? But it's also about the overall, the balance, the coordination,
Yes.
kinesthesiology, if you will, right? And so it rolls all of that physical aspect into the trait.
Hopefully that would mean that for the game master or legend master running the game, that it becomes really easy to figure out what statistic you're calling for when you're just calling for a d20 roll of some kind.
Right.
Okay.
One of the approaches you have in here that I thought was really cool, and you keep it throughout all of it, right? And that's that, like we were talking earlier, the groupings, if you will. Instead of saying everything very specific, just that broad grouping. So, like when we look at skills, conceal, detect, knowledge, search, social, not the 6 different things that could be social, or the 14 different
Yes.
knowledges there are, but
Yes.
just that very broad
It
approach to it.
I think it should free up the headspace of the game master a little bit. To me, when I look at arcana, history, it's all the same thing. It's knowledge. And you just
Mhm.
decide, okay, is this character going to be good at this particular kind of knowledge? I'll adjust the difficulty based on that.
Right.
Yeah.
What it, and I do you require the players to identify anything deeper than that? Like so knowledge, and then they have to write something out there and what that knowledge is, general terms, maybe not specified game terms, right? But like a general term out there, or is it just
Yes. So
okay?
as you know, when I run the game, what I like to do, I do the same thing for languages. Languages is not gamified in this game. I mean, quite frankly, it's not gamified in any system I've ever seen. So if you were playing generic Fantasyland and you're like, my character is an elf, I'm going to say, okay, you probably know the common tongue and the language of the elves, and ta-da, you gave me a
Right,
good reason. So for
right,
knowledge, the exact same thing. If you are a cleric, a holy person, you're going to have a lot of religious knowledge, and you're probably not going to know if the plant's going to be poisonous or not.
The hit points in your system are called resolve. Is there a
Resolve.
reason for that?
So I know that for most of these systems, for those of us who play these games, we know what hit points are supposed to represent, but the wording is not helpful. So they'll even tell you in all of our fantasy TTRPG books that hit points doesn't mean you're supposed to be getting it physically hit every single turn. Every time something beats your physical defense, it is you're getting tired out, and your willpower is being shaken. And then when you hit 0, that's when you get like the mortal wound, like the actual
right,
wound. But you'll see it in Let's Plays all the time, the big famous ones. They talk about how, okay, that did 40, you have over 100 hit points. That did 46 hit points. The spear's through your gut. That makes no sense. And I think part of that is the word hit points. So by calling it resolve and saying, yes, it is your resolve to fight, it might be a minor cut on your cheek, or it hits you, but you still parried it with your shield, but it exhausts you. And then once your resolve hits 0, boom, that's the idea.
I like that idea.
yeah.
Um, your magic system. Do you want to describe your magic system because it's unique?
It's unique. So this was the one thing I tried. I tried to make everything so broad, so just the backbone, right? But with a magic system, it's like a sci-fi setting. You can't be completely agnostic. There needed to be a magic system. So when I look at most media, I am not thinking in D&D or Pathfinder or anything like that. When I look at most fantasy media, people turn on their magical abilities and they go pew pew. They just go. So in Tales of Legend, you have what's called your magic source. I will not tell you what that magic source is. That is not my job. That is not the game's job. That is up to your legend master, how that world works. But whatever your magic source is, and even if you wanted to do more like a D&D generic thing, like, okay, Warlock is the patron and the sorcerer is the origin and all that good stuff, right? Whatever your magic source is, you tap into that magic source. And then for the next 10 rounds, 1 minute, you're infused with whatever your magical source is, and you can just go. Now, for people who are very used to these other fantasy TTRPGs like D&D and Pathfinder, their first thought is, no spell slots, isn't that overpowered? The limiting factor in Tales of Legend is the action economy itself. So at level 1, you only have 2 action points. At level 2, you have 3. But at the end of the game, you have 6. And so to cast a spell, to start casting a spell, will take 1 action point. For every action point you put into that spell, you are ranking that spell and adding an extra effect. There are only 10, I've got 2 more in the works. There are only 10 spells in the game that have a list of extra added on features that you can rank into the spell. So there is a spell called Magic Attack. There's your magic spell. There is your damaging spell. There's your Fireball. There's your Blizzard. There's your Eldritch Blast. There's your light whip.
Magic
I don't know
missile.
what you're going to call it. Magic missile. Like I'm trying to even absurd things, whatever you want to call it. I create a little black hole and I put my fist through it. It punches you in the face on the other side of the map. I don't care how you call it. That is your magic attack. And then under that are 5 different options, and each of those 5 options scale with extra ranks to turn that into a wall of fire, a fireball, a whatever you want that to be. So there's a lot of customization options based in the moment, what that spellcaster sees on the battlefield and what they want to do. And if they want to tap into their magical source, not in combat, to fly around real quick or something, okay, you get 1 minute per magic tap. And the number of times you can tap per day is equal to that focus score. So you're either going to be a heavy spellcaster and do that all day, or you're going to be a half caster or even a 1/3 caster. Maybe you're. I love the idea of like a spell sword person, but they only have like 1 or 2 taps a day, and they turn their sword to be like a flaming sword and like do their thing. They're mostly a martial character. I noticed that it's really lopsided in combat when like all the monsters go at once. That's either really bad for the monsters or really bad for the players. And so you have to go good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy, like that. Which I think when you think about what is supposed to be represented in turn-based combat, which is all these things are, if you were looking at it on screen, all of these things would be resolving at the same time.
Correct, yeah.
Doing it that way, I think represents that way better than all the monsters act at once in like the middle of the initiative order, and that kind of thing. I think that makes more sense.
I do have a question on that.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you have a big giant monster that versus five characters? Like, how do you handle that in your system?
So that comes out in the creature bonuses. So the word that we use is bonus. So physicality bonus, that is a feature that you grab. It's like a feat.
I want everybody to know I did tell him beforehand I did not get to the creature section in the book.
Creatures have way more options than the heroes do, and one of them, it's not. I think it's actually in the supplemental book, but in my, I get to use my supplemental material when I run games. It's called adaptable, which is when you are outnumbered by this much, you get this many turns, not extra action points. Turns.
Nice. You broke out your character sheet in 3 pages, and those 3 pages have specific like usages in the game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like your page 1, like you want to break that down because it's your character sheet really is crucial to your system from what I saw.
Yes, and everybody can look at the character sheet. It is a free download on the website. The first page is your general, everything that you would need just going out in the world. If you are a experienced TTRPG player at all, the vast majority of your session is not done in combat. It's done just walking around the world. So what do you need? You need to know what your stats are. You need to know how much money you have. You need to know what kind of gear you have. That sort of thing. So page 1 is here's me walking around the world. This is my general stats. When you go to page 2, that is combat specific. So I really like this because when you play a TTRPG, you're playing 2 games. You're playing the role play game, and then you go into bullet time turn-based combat. So you have a page for one and a page for the other. Nice. So you have your resolve, you have your physical and mental defense, you have your walking speed, you have your action points. There are lists of the different actions you can take, so you don't have to scramble through the book. And status effects actually become a bigger part of this game. And so you're going to want to know when you have it, when you don't, you can just do a quick toggle. And it's really helpful for this because it's a modifiable PDF document. So you don't have to print it out and like mark erase. You can just click, which is super, super helpful. And then right there in the middle, the big thing that you care about the most, your combat options. That's a little broad because Is it a weapon? Is it a spell? Is it a tail that you have? I don't know what your character's going to do. So, yeah. And then the third and bottom page is magic and just a list of whatever bonuses you picked as you've leveled up.
Nice. I think it's broken out really well.
Just some of the comments. So I like the aspect bonuses, right? So for every point you put in, looking at your aspect bonuses makes it real simple. I don't get, do I get one every 3? Do I get one every 5?
Every single time.
Do I trade in an aspect point to get a bonus? What do I got to do with that? It just makes it straightforward, if you will, on how you select those. And then, so like Dave talked earlier, kind of the class structure. You have X amount of points here and X amount of points here. Here's a bonus you get.
You get 1 aspect point. You get 1 bonus. It's just 1 and 1 and 1. And it's 1 and 1 and 1 because, again, if you've played a lot of these kind of like D&D based games,
right,
you have the score and you have the modifier, which are 2 different things. Why? Why? So the score is the modifier, and no one asked for this, but there's no negatives. There's no negative numbers.
0. I like that.
Your races level up with you, right? So as you level up, you get additional bonuses for.
Yeah, actually, can we look at the hero sheet?
Yeah,
it's going to be
give me a sec.
Yeah.
So I think it's on the final heritage bonus. Is that what you wanted to look at?
Yeah. So the heritage bonuses come on odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, but the system caps out at 15. And so what do you do for the other odd numbers? We have what are called archetype bonuses. So when you get into the advanced stages of the game, about level 9 sounds about right, since we go to 15, you get to, based on what your aspect spread is, you can grab an archetype bonus. For example, the warrior. In Tales of Legend, you can only take the same action up to twice per turn. So even though you're gaining more action points, you can't just attack 6 times at high levels. That's too crazy. But another thing I really enjoy is how these are very short sentences that mechanically change a lot. So in a game where you can only take 2 of the same action, the warrior archetype bonus is you have to have at least 6 points in physicality. You can attack 3 times per turn. Huge, but it's so simple. So those are the big game breaking.
Yeah, that would definitely change the system quite a bit.
And that's what you would expect when you get to the archetype bonuses. They're called archetypes for a reason. There's the crafter, which, now you can make magic items. Oh, so that's the game has now changed for my character because my character has gone into being like an expert in what their thing is.
Is there anything that you would like that we didn't cover that you would like people to know about your system?
Oh, yeah, there is one other thing. 2 actually, but they're related. I like martial characters. I love spellcasting too, but I really, really like martial characters. And the eternal conflicts for fantasy TTRPGs has been balancing martials versus casters.
Right.
So in my game, the casting is down a little bit in power. Not by a whole lot, but a little bit in power. The magic is not, you can do whatever you want. And the martial abilities are up quite a bit. So yeah, a high level magic person putting all of their ranks in a magic attack, you still have to roll to hit. And if it hits, it's going to do so much damage. It's not even funny. But your martial characters, especially the melee martial characters, deal so much more damage. In damage, it's melee followed by ranged followed by magic in damage. And then also on the weapon front, especially the melee front, for ranged, I had to go with bows and crossbows. It is a fantasy setting. But for melee weapons, instead of having longsword, scimitar, dagger, I have categories of weapons. Small weapon, light weapon, flexible weapon, and powerful weapon.
There we go.
I don't care what that weapon is. You tell me what it is. You want to use a scythe? Use a scythe. You want a spear that does 2d6 damage finally? You can have a spear that does 2d6 damage finally. Because all the system cares about is the mechanic. You are the creative person. You are the person with your character concept. So if I want to wield a giant scythe, I will say I have a powerful weapon that deals uh, slice damage. And then I'm going to say, this is a scythe. That
Right.
easy.
I do something very similar in Grimwood.
It's great. Let the people decide what they have. I will say this. If you're somebody who loves a lot of art, and you love a lot of flowery language, and you love a lot of descriptions, and you love a lot of, that's not going to be in this book. This book is 60 pages, so I almost look at it like an instruction manual more than a book. 30 pages of it is everything that the player needs to know. 30 pages of it is everything that your legend master is going to know. Super quick, easy to reference. It's no nonsense. This comes from me being an ADHD kid and carrying around tomes of books or scrolling through hundreds of pages to find the mechanic I need. That drove me crazy. So I understand. I totally understand if you're the kind of person that loves art and settings and lore and descriptive language that gives you an idea. That's not going to be in this game. This game tries to get out of your way for that kind of stuff and just find what you need mechanically and move on with your amazing idea.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that. Definitely. Are you eventually going to release a book version?
I would love to do that. That is the part I would like to kickstart. That is the part I would like to kickstart.
Excellent.
And then down the road, I've got my version of, I call it the Creature Compendium. That's going to be like 300 to 500 creatures. And then I have another supplement in the works. I call it Epic Tales and Legendary Heroes, which is going to have two extra heritages, 2 extra spell options, one of which is called Change. For all of you Druid fans, you want to be able to change yourself, or you're a werewolf fan, that's going to be in that book when it comes out. And yeah, so I've got some things down the line I'm already thinking about.
Good.
Right.
Me too. It doesn't stop. Once you start, you're kind of
Right.
Is there anything you want the people to know before we call it? Because I think we've covered most everything that I can think of.
Sure. One last thing. If you all don't mind, please, when you go to the website and take a look and grab all the free stuff, join the Discord server. And you know, we've got about 30 people in there right now. It's not super active yet, but I'm going to do some character creation, voice chats. I'd like to do some one shots, and I'd like to do some networking through there, and just see, you know, the community getting bigger and chatting with people, and that would be really fun. And I've also started a Tales of Legend YouTube channel. There are only 2 videos on there so far. The idea right now is everything is tutorial based. So if you're somebody who loves to play board games and you like to go to the YouTube channels where they teach you how to play the game so you don't have to read the book, that's what the first like 10 videos on the YouTube channel are going to be. So please, it's Legendary Tales.
I posted it on the chat for people.
Awesome. Just keep an eye out on those. I'm going to try to make sure those happen weekly. And yeah, so that would be wonderful.
Definitely. Join his Discord and go ahead and subscribe to his YouTube, because his 2 videos have been very informative, and it's great. Thank you for coming by. Here we go.